So something I like to ask in an early disco is like, what do you want to tell me right now? What is something that you really wish I asked you? Or what is something that I'm missing? What is something that you want to talk about that I haven't asked you about? When you open that door, it like builds trust, it builds rapport, it builds like a consultative sale that you could have wasted your whole sales cycle because you didn't ask that one question in the beginning.
Welcome to Rep Matters, a podcast for sales professionals who are eager to build their business acumen and become top performers. In each episode, your hosts, Zoya Zagelbacher and Caroline Jones, explore the real-life experiences, obstacles, and triumphs of salespeople. With an emphasis on authenticity and storytelling, listeners gain valuable insights into the strategies, mindsets, and skills that drive success in sales. Let's get started.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Rep Matters. This episode is brought to you by Marketers in Demand. Marketers in Demand has in-depth videos, podcasts, and articles from some of B2B's most in-demand marketers. Today, our guest is Courtney Bannon. Courtney is the Senior Account Executive at Revivn. She left JP Morgan in 2019 to join as the company's first SDR when they were less than 10 full-time employees. She quickly graduated into a full lifecycle position under founder-led sales, where she was sourcing her own pipeline while also feeding two AEs. She's doubled her sales each year for the last 3 years and is now supported by a team of 4 SDRs. Courtney is the only senior rep at the company and is responsible for all new enterprise business at Revivn. Courtney, thanks so much for joining us today. Super excited to talk to you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm so glad we were able to connect.
Yeah, me too. I think there's, even just in your bio, there's so many pieces that people can learn from your steps. Like, we'll talk about all of it, but why don't we start at the beginning? You left JP Morgan to join a tech company. How did all of that go down?
Oh my gosh. That's like, that could be, a 90-minute podcast in itself for any like 23-year-old person who is going through the spiral of, oh my gosh, I'm in this corporate job. Do I quit? Do I sell everything? I'm 23. I should just move to the middle of the country, move whatever spiral any like post-grad has. But for me, my time at JP Morgan was great. It was like a great match for my skill set at the time, which was project management and on a technical piece. So at JP Morgan, I was a project manager for projects between the engineering team and the business users. And I was taking like the business users, hey, Courtney, this isn't working right. We need XYZ fix to the application. Can you bring this to the engineering team? And I would bring all of that together. And it was really cool. It was great use of my skill set. I moved really quickly. I was really well respected at the company. In fact, I started in like an analyst rotational program where it was like an accelerated leadership program. And I started in my first rotation and my team was like, hey, your rotation's coming up, but you can't leave. Like, we're not letting you leave. We really need you in this position because the 3 other rotational programs were more like data entry and this was more project management. And they're like, you can't leave. And it actually awarded me a chance to like run a project out of Geneva, one out of Edinburgh. Like, it was really cool. But I kind of looked around, and I think you can probably empathize with this as well, just being international. I started my job at JP Morgan to move internationally. That was my whole goal when I joined the company, and to kind of honestly make my parents proud of the logo where I was working, and JP Morgan definitely accomplished that. And I worked a lot of my time at JP Morgan trying to get this connection internationally. I made a connection to this woman in Edinburgh. She wanted to hire me. We were good to go. The visa was coming. I was like, yep, I did it. I'm moving to Scotland. And then Brexit happened and it canceled all American visas. So I stayed at JP Morgan for like 9 more months after that to save all of my money so that I could quit and travel. And that's a whole different story. But the whole kind of background for why I decided to quit was because I looked at my senior leadership and I was like, I don't really like their life. I don't really want to be a senior manager in a bank in banking. I don't want to like work in financial services. And it was like very forward looking. And I just was like, I don't want my boss's job and I don't want my boss's job. So where else can I go?
Have you been thinking at all lately about the fact that like our bosses' jobs, one, will be very different in 10, 20 years because of AI, and two, like our career paths are not defined because of AI? Or like, do you think, in general, the sales path will stay the same in our lifetime?
I feel like we use ChatGPT all the time at work, mostly when I'm coaching the SDRs. I'm like, they're like, how should I respond to this email? And I'm like, take a stab at it. Use ChatGPT. Come back to me. But I think like people will always want to buy from people in certain industries. That's just my gut. Like, I think even when you see the whole like influencer economy where people were like, influencers became super popular and because you were getting advice from a trusted resource, and then it swung the complete opposite way where people are like, okay, this is paid. Now I don't trust it again. So someone is always going to want to buy from someone they trust, I think, at some point.
So interesting. And it gives me some peace because I do think about that, right? In fact, I was talking to a friend, someone in sales who is making a huge pivot out of sales because she sees the life of a CRO and realized it wasn't for her. So I think it's a worthwhile exercise. And I'm so happy that you did that when you did, because I do think the banking world can get its claws in you eventually, to see like, do I want that next job? Do I want the job after that? And if there's some other job out there, what kind of like lily pad do I need to hop to get over there?
Yeah. And it's perhaps this is hypocritical, but because I said that about JP Morgan being like, I don't want my boss's job, and that's why I wanted to move. But similarly, I don't know that I actually want to be a CRO, but I know that I want to be in sales. But maybe it's because of like, maybe it's the industry, maybe it's I mean, you can figure out your career at any time. I'm still working through it. But I think being a CRO would be way more fun than being an MD at JP Morgan at this point. But it all depends like in what function you're in as well.
And like, one, I could worry that we don't know what those big jobs will look like in a few decades. Or I could just be like, all right, well, didn't see AI coming even 10 years ago in the way, maybe I missed everything, but I didn't see it making such an impact on the sales world even just 10 years ago. We don't need to worry because it will kind of take care of itself. New jobs will evolve and we will just keep like sharpening our skills. Like, I don't think that the sales job has any piece of it that isn't future proof.
People find a way as well, right? Salespeople in particular are just so resourceful. There's so much content online about like how to be a better seller. And also there's that book, Spin Selling, that was written in 1984 or whatever, that still is consistent to today. Like, we'll find a way to adapt to what it is.
Okay, I will take us back a little bit to your path because you mentioned spin selling and like there's a lot of opportunities for salespeople to educate themselves. You joined a bootstrapped small team early on, coming from a different industry. Can you tell us first what your company does, what your company is all about, and then what it was like joining at that time in the company's life?
Yeah. So Revivn is an IT recycling company. So on a corporate level. So basically some of our partners are like Adobe, Pinterest, X. Lyft is one of our customers as well. And basically if you've ever had your company replace your computer, those computers need to go somewhere. And Revivn handles that on an enterprise scale. So we physically go on site to the office, we pick up the computers and we repurpose them. So we're a certified benefit corporation. So we donate computers on a regular basis. And also we make our money by reselling those computers. So there's a huge physical component to Revivn. And also there's a software that backs it that basically helps you understand, like, here's when we picked up this hardware. Here is like how we destroyed the data if it comes up with an audit, that sort of thing. We have like a centralized portal for that. And yeah, so it's not traditional SaaS, it's a service. And actually the service comes at no cost, which we can get into Revivn's whole business model. So, but we'll put a pin in that. But basically I'm selling a free service for the most part. And then in terms of what was it like when I joined the company with under 10 employees, I think perspective is so important in this kind of conversation, because when I joined, I was 25 probably, never had a sales job, never worked in IT recycling, like obviously. And I didn't know what to expect. So me jumping in, I wanted to go to a place where I was able to be in the decision-making room. Or not even in the decision-making room, whatever I did made an impact on the rest of the company, or even made an impact on my team. Whereas JP Morgan, I was one of 50, 100,000 people. I just wanted to be in a place where my impact was tangible. And that couldn't be more true at Revivn. I was literally the only SDR. There were 2 AEs who I was feeding their full pipeline, but I had no idea what I was doing. Like truly no idea what I was doing. Completely founder-led sales. But I walked into the office and I could see everyone who worked at Revivn, and I knew what everyone did. I knew everyone's mom's name. I was like a very like sweet, cool environment where you're actually making a difference. You're all working really hard and you're all just like figuring it out. One of our early core values was, we've like since iterated and changed, but so I still resonate, was embracing ambiguity. And I think like kind of they put that in there just to be like, hey guys, it's going to be, you're not going to know what's going to come, but it's one of our core values. But I think you never knew what was going to happen in the day to day, and you just had to wing it. You had to figure it out. I wish I had ChatGPT when I first started at Revivn.
Oh my God, all of the hours we could have saved on copy. Although it actually took till like my 3rd or 4th sales job where I was like actually doing a high volume of like cold outreach that was written versus just being on the phone. But
so what was so interesting,
interesting.
Revivn, like we didn't have any of that shit. Like we didn't have Salesforce. I didn't have phone numbers. I didn't have email addresses. I had to like test every single email address that I sent. Like there was no validator. There was barely a sequencing tool. We tracked all of our CRM was a shared Google sheet. So I was do 100% email outbound, like all 100% outbound from a company perspective. We had 0 inbound leads. So I was just like in Sales Navigator fighting for my life, like trying to figure it out. But like, yeah, so many different tools enable the sale now.
Yeah, which is good. But I'm sure in some ways you kind of look back to that time and you're like, well, I figured it out, didn't I? Like, I didn't actually need all those tools to be successful, because ultimately here you are successful. I do think it's interesting too, looking back at the value, even such early, like a 10-person company having values like that is so important just on like a people side of things, because it guides someone like you joining the company. Like, oh, okay, this is normal. Like, this is how it's going to be. Of course, that's challenging. Like, and it's not for everyone, but I think it's really important if someone's thinking about changing industries or changing even from a more structured sales job, look to the company's values. Hopefully it's clear what kind of place it's going to be like to work. And if not, just assume you're going to be building things from scratch, because sitting around complaining that there's no, sales orchestration tool is just going to be a gigantic waste of time.
Totally. And I think my sales naivety was a strength in this process. And also, to your point, it's kind of a double-edged sword. Like I'm now supported by a team of 4 SDRs, which is very cool, very full circle. I get to sit next to them in the bullpen, coach them every day. But I'm like, you don't know what it's like. You don't know how hard it was for me to like find the right person And I feel like a grandma where you're like, kids these days never understand
Yeah.
whatever. But I also feel like it created this grit in me that I'm like, okay, this email didn't work. I'm going to try another one. Whereas now they're like, it's not popping up in Zoom info. I'm just going to skip it. It's like, you gotta, yeah, it's a double-edged sword.
Yeah, and an early stage startup is a unique opportunity that, like, if you're creative, if you're scrappy,
Oh yeah.
I'm like so grandma over here at this age, so over like pure hustle till you drop culture. I have no time for it. But I do think about people who are kind of entrepreneurial, creative, curious. They would thrive in an environment like that. Whereas if you just want to get in, do what you're told. And honestly, I like
Mhm.
no shade. Like there are times in my career where I wanted something more fixed and something more clear cut. But if you're kind of interested in something that's a little bit more green field, going somewhere early is something to explore, perhaps.
Yeah, and I definitely thinking about having more greenfield and more space to play with. I gave myself my own promotion from SDR to AE because that's how much greenfield I had at any given moment. And I was 25 years old and I was recommending to our CEO, hey, we need a call recording platform, or hey, we need to introduce opportunities into Salesforce. Like, this is what an opportunity is. He's like, oh, okay. Like, there is so much opportunity, but there's so much work behind it. And like, you just have to connect to the right people. You have to find the right resources. It's all out there, but it's a lot of work. It can be a lot of work. And I think something we kind of talked about was, as a founding member of a sales team, there's like, where I am lucky is kind of two things. One, that our VC back is pretty low. We don't have much VC backing. We're mostly bootstrapped, which I can definitely talk more about. And two, with no sales background, I joined Revivn with two non-technical co-founders, two sales co-founders. So if both of them were technical co-founders, I was a salesperson who never did sales before, disaster. Like,
Right.
they gave me enough support to be able to spread my wings and know what to ask for, but I still was going to other SDRs. I'm cold emailing other SDRs for perspective. I'm like, hey, I'm earning $50 per meeting. Like, how much do you guys earn? And like, some people would get back to me and they'd be like, oh, that's way too low. Or some people would be like, oh, that's great. But yeah, like, you invent it yourself, and it's absolutely not for everyone. I'm like the most tenured employee at Revivn now, except for one other. And I've seen a lot of people who it's just like, I can't handle the lack of bumpers on the bowling lane. It's too much.
Yeah, you figure it out quick. And yeah, you've seen multiple iterations of the company. You worked at a company that dealt with IT during the past 5 years where it drastically changed at least twice. So can you tell us about the process of like selling this type of solution and service in 2019 versus 2020 versus now in this kind of post-pandemic world?
Absolutely. I think the biggest thing is that Revivn is not inherently a SaaS company. We are a service company with a major physical component. We cannot do business without physically being in person. So the connection to COVID there is clear, right? So 2019, we were going on site to people's offices. We were picking up their hardware. It was easy, signed, sealed, delivered. Great. Coincidentally, January 2020 was when I gave myself my AE promotion, when I had to start closing my own deals. And I couldn't have picked a worse time for myself because nobody was in the office and my whole quota depended on me going into an office. It was challenging for Revivn. We cut 40% of our staff during COVID because we have more than half of our business is techs, like people who are physically fixing computers and things like that. And we just didn't have the volume of hardware coming in to support it. So the biggest change from pre-COVID to post-COVID is that every single account that I speak to has some sort of remote component to their business, remote workforce. So we basically had to iterate. And I give props to our founders. This was like, we just launched a new product where we're helping retrieve remote employees' devices. If you've ever gotten like a QR code or like a box to your apartment where you put your computer in, Revivn does that now. And it was just because our customers were asking for it for so long. They were like, we have remote employees. It's not just about you coming to our office anymore. We need to get the remote folks as well. So yeah, people are always going to have computers, always going to need computers. There's always going to be IT. It's just about where is that IT located. We've like also fully expanded geographically. When I first started at Revivn, we were only picking up Mac computers from New York and San Francisco. That's where our 2 HQs are. And like last week, I did a pickup in Singapore, I think, where we were picking up there. We've done pickups all across India, almost every continent. Yeah, like expanded a lot geographically and from a hardware type perspective as well.
Is there going to be a chance for you to finally get yourself overseas with this girl?
Caroline, like so many things in the universe are pointing to yes. Like, yeah, so many, even just our connection alone. It was funny when I first met my now fiance, we were on like our 5th date and he was like, I have to tell you something, like I'm trying to relocate to Germany. Like, would you come with me? And I was like, yes, I will. Like, absolutely. And then COVID killed that as well. But I think 3rd time's a charm. Like, I'm going to get a 3rd opportunity. I'm sure of it. We're opening up some space in the UK. So there's opportunity.
It's happening. Okay. So when we have you back on the pod, you'll be in some other time zone, maybe.
Yep.
We talked a little about like, okay, spin selling, sales books, resources. You mentioned cold emailing other SDRs to like pressure test what you were experiencing. What are some other ways that you handled your own professional development reporting to founders for most of your time at Revivn?
Yeah, the most unique one really. So after I left JP Morgan, I was unemployed for 8 to 10 months, like almost a year. And I like really struggled interviewing. I just had probably 40 different interviews and I just couldn't figure out what I wanted to do, which is kind of how I ultimately ended up in sales, but we can talk more about that as well. But one of the most unique things I did when I did get my job at Revivn was during my interview extravaganza, I connected with a woman who I really vibed with. She was interviewing me. We just really connected. We just had a lot to talk about. It didn't feel like an interview. It felt more like a jam sesh almost. But so she pushed me on to the next round, and then I didn't get on to some later round, whatever. But when I got the job at Revivn, I reached out to this woman who interviewed me. And I was like, hey, I really enjoyed our conversation. I'm at this new company now. Would you be open to talking about like women in sales generally and what it's like? And she was like, yeah, why not? Which I think is a testament to I guess that wasn't really a cold email, but as a salesperson, you learn how to reach out to anybody. You learn how to connect with anybody. And it was so cool that this woman, her name is Allie Penny. She was at Yext at the time. And she's now moved on. She was running their analyst development program there as well. But yeah, it's a testament to like, what if they say yes? Just reach out. What's the best that could happen? And so I got coffee with her a couple times. I had a couple Zoom calls with her, and she connected me with some other people as well. And that's just from like a connections perspective. But yeah, I think like whenever I found someone who, a lot of our customers, a lot of Revivn's customers, I would look for SDRs and say like, hey, can I vibe check with you and ask them? And then I think, again, it's kind of happening for the 2nd time where I need to find resources myself because I am the first person who's ever done enterprise sales at Revivn. Like we've gone up stack for the first time, and now I have to figure out what that looks like. But honestly, so much, I definitely Google a bunch, but I get so much more value by talking to people and just being like, just exactly to your point, pressure testing. Hey, does this make sense? Like, do you use opportunities? If you don't hit your quota, will you get fired? Like, what does it look like? I just didn't have any answers. I didn't know. Had to ask.
Yeah, the importance of like external networking if you don't have an internal sales team. And even if you do, like for anybody listening to this, like regardless of the size of your company, I think the layoffs across SaaS have really hurt a lot of people and maybe made us realize like the stronger our network, the more cushioned a surprise like that can be. So not only for your own professional development while you're in the seat, but also having people who can keep an eye out for you if you fall on hard times. Like it's like the benefit of having full pipeline. Like it's just it's
Absolutely.
security and it makes things more fun.
Totally. And also, yeah, like was in a good position that my co-CEOs encouraged me to go outside of the org. Like they were like, yep, we know that we don't have an internal sales team. You should go check and ask them. And I think it also speaks to the culture at Revivn as well, where like I was just encouraged to go outside and get the answers. And actually so much of Revivn's culture is ingrained to me. Both of my CEOs are coming to my wedding in a few months. Like I feel like that's such a unique position to be in as well.
That's so cool. And I don't know, it's those kinds of relationships like you'll probably have for the rest of your life. And like that's another benefit of being a big fish in a small pond. And this big fish has recently, within the last year, gotten a manager, sales manager for the first time. So can you have a manager? I am happy to call my former sales manager, Matt Deese. Can you tell me something that's maybe surprised you since learning more about sales methodologies or sales structures, having like a dedicated person that you can report to that's the sales function only?
Yeah, I think so much. Everything is upside down in a good way and a way that is constantly expanding my brain every day. And Matt has been so great to work with. He's so sharp and he like fully has changed my opinion on how a good sales manager manages. Like I always kind of pictured a sales manager being someone who is super micromanagey, super on top of you, like super aggressive, whereas Matt leads with so much curiosity and saying like, hey, I saw that you moved this opportunity to demo, or you moved it to negotiation, whatever. Do you know who the signer is? How did you figure that out? And then I'm like, oh wait, I don't know who the signer is. Sorry, I'll move it back. You're right. And kind of finding ways to call me out on my own challenges. But even like more than just the managerial style, the first thing I learned is that I'm not fighting for myself anymore. So like Matt basically sat me down multiple times and he was like, I'm here to help you get where you need to go. It's not you don't have to do all of this outside research anymore. You can literally just ask me, am I like, in your experience, what have other reps gotten paid before? Or like, in your experience, what is a normal time to close? Or like all of these questions that I thought that if I asked my CEO, I would kind of come off as incompetent. Matt was like, no, like this is shit that you need to understand. And I'm here to help you look really good to the CEO now. Like my whole job is making both of us look good. And then from a methodologies perspective, the most obvious one is that I learned that there's a name for everything. Like I was doing the sales methodology, but I didn't know that it had a name, really. Like discovery was a term that I learned after being a seller for 3 years. Like, but I think the biggest, we're likely introducing MedPick to our org now. But we kind of started with Bant just to like get the team up to speed on what a sales methodology is. And the biggest one for me was timing and asking about timing. So, you know, upon contract signature, what's interesting about our business is like once the contract is signed, the sale is actually not over. You actually need to schedule the pickup. The contract doesn't make you any money. You need to like get the team on site to get the computers. So it's like what okay, great. Contract is in negotiation. What, if anything, would prevent us from getting a pickup this month if we sign the contract? I've never asked a question like that in my life. I'd never asked a like timing when, okay, great. Like, you're sharing this with legal. When's a good time for me to check back in? When do you typically hear back from them? How often does it typically take to process? All of that timing stuff, because like there just isn't it's a free service. I can't discount it to create urgency. Like, I can't create artificial timing. So asking what the timing is and helping them work back from that has been insane from a tightening my sales cycle perspective.
So important. And even people who had formal sales training in their first sales job miss this. I've missed it 1,000 times, or not asked often enough, or not asked the right person often enough. So it's so great that you've been able to use that to your advantage. It's interesting. It's almost like you got so good at managing up to the founders, because the way that you would manage up to a founder is different from a sales manager. But you're like, I will do everything myself and only ask you if like the place is literally on fire. You had to actually dial that down. A lot of people need to dial up being thoughtful about what's on their manager's plate and trying to, one of the best compliments I've ever gotten, I still remember this, was from Dees. It was a positive piece of feedback, I guess. He said, Dees, if you're listening to this, I'm sorry for botching your words, but it was something like, I don't have to do anything for you. Which is like, which is the nicest thing he could have said to me. But like, that's managing up, right? Is like just doing stuff on your own, calling in your manager when you need them. But you actually needed to learn to ask for that because you were so used to like truly figuring it out completely by yourself.
Exactly. Like, the CEO did not want to hear about this like minuscule deal that I knew how to handle myself, that I just wanted. What Dees is really good at is like, sometimes I'll just go over to his desk, because we're 4 days a week in person, which is unusual, I think, but we're in person in the office. I'll just go over to his desk and be like, can I think out loud with you for a sec? And I'll sit down and I'll just talk about it. And then he's like, you good? I'm like, yep, got the answer. Turn around and go back. Like, sometimes you just got to get it out of your own head. But yeah, like, my CEO didn't want to hear that. My CEO was like, no, you may not come in here and sit in my office and talk out loud for me to validate you. Like, no. And that, exactly to your point, is what Matt and I have talked a lot about. It's like, you can tell me when things are actually not working or things are hard if you want, and I can help you solve them. I'm like, oh, that's so cool. Thank you.
It's amazing. That's literally his job.
Yeah.
But very important. And not just for people going from founder-led sales, but some people don't have the experience of having like a supportive manager, or have some kind of strange relationship, or the manager is overstretched maybe and can't give that kind of time of day. But like, I wish there was another phrase to use here, but the blocking and tackling, I feel like it's kind of a cliche at this point. Super important from the sales manager. And I have so much more I want to talk to you about, but I'm going to prioritize. So you said something and have an interesting experience that I think a lot of salespeople don't have, which is actually being part of an evaluation. Like, you've evaluated software to implement on your team. For me, the first time that I was on the buying side was when I moved to enablement. And I was like, oh, every salesperson should be part of an evaluation so they know what it's like on the other side of the table if they haven't been a buyer before. Is there anything that you've learned about sales or that's informed your own process from being on the evaluation side of things?
Absolutely. I am so with you. Every salesperson should buy something, even if it's small. Like, talk to another salesperson. It almost made me sick the first time I did it, because I was like, oh my gosh, I do these things that are so annoying. Like, they're so difficult. Like, one of the things that's really hard is, so I participated in buying outreach for Revivn, and it was like, I would never want to be working for outreach or SalesLoft, where you're just competing against the same person all the time. Like, that seems like such a difficult sale. But I remember like one of the reps didn't ask me the question that I really wanted him to ask. And I can't even remember what it was, but I remember being like, if he asked me this question, like I would be able to make his sales so much easier, which I think is kind of a unique perspective from a sales person. So something I like to ask in an early disco is like, what do you want to tell me right now? What is something that you really wish I asked you? Or what is something that I'm missing? What is something that you want to talk about that I haven't asked you about? And when
Wow.
you open the door for someone to, in addition to like listening 80%, talking 20%, which is also a challenge, when you open that door, it like builds trust, it builds rapport, it builds like a consultative sale that you could have wasted your whole sales cycle because you didn't ask that one question in the beginning.
Especially if you're selling to salespeople. It's like
Oh,
we want to give you that layup.
totally.
And
I think,
we spend so much time talking. Here I am talking over you right now.
oh no, I talked over you. I think it's mostly just because we have so many things we need to discuss. But yeah, like I go back and forth about the thought of selling to a salesperson. Like I sell into IT people who they have their own, unique set of challenges. But like the thought of selling to a salesperson who knows closing questions, who knows like all of the methodologies can help and can probably be a challenge as well.
Yeah, in some ways, maybe easy because you understand them better than you might understand a buyer that you have no shared foundation with, but you're you are under the microscope selling is
Totally.
scary.
And yeah, and it was so interesting as well during that buying process that one of them was like, why don't I have you speak to one of my referrals? Like you can talk to them, see what it's like. And I spoke to the referral and they were like, yeah, outreach and sales soft are the same. Doesn't matter which one you choose. Like you're fine. So
Wow.
it spoke to the value of picking a good referral as well. And the ultimate
Yeah,
reason
that's
that we
hard.
chose outreach had nothing to do with my business use case. It had to do with our Salesforce admin had used outreach before. So he didn't need to learn anything new. That was literally the only thing that defined it.
That's so interesting, especially as these companies are like consolidating more and more. The offering starts to look quite similar, commoditized almost. So then what's going to be the differentiator? I feel like this is a user gems ad, like
Yeah.
kind of accidentally following people who already understand and use your product is huge. And to me, what I also hear from that story is as a salesperson, you never really understand everything that's going on the buyer side. And if you do, it's because you've done a terrific job and earned the trust and have an insight into that. But I feel like there's so much that goes on that we're never quite privy to, and we have to work with the information that we have.
Yeah. And like you don't know which question to ask. So just ask the question, what am I missing? Like, what do you want to tell me right now? I can tell you want to tell
Yeah.
me something. Tell me, what is it? Let me help you. And like if you get to that point where you've built the rapport ahead of time as well, you're making recommendations outside of your scope, you're like asking super broad questions, then they'll tell you crazy stuff. Like, and it's awesome. Like, because I am lucky in that I genuinely believe that Revivn is the best in the market and anyone who chooses to use it would make their life so much easier. Like, so it makes my job a lot easier as well. And people like me a lot more because I am genuinely, helping them. But yeah, like people will share stuff with you if you ask.
That's an amazing question. I'm so happy we have that as a takeaway in this. I will bring us to our wrap up questions, Courtney. So 5 years from now, we see your name in headlines for following your passion and doing something big. What's the headline?
5 years is tight, but I will definitely be international at that point. I think we have to get there. But I think maybe in 25 years, here's the vision I have. I have 25 houseplants at our apartment here. And then I also manage probably 30 more at the Revivn HQ. So I have a whole squad under my watch, and I would love to like build a wildflower stand where I just grow wildflowers in my yard, and I maybe I have a couple chickens. Maybe I sell their eggs. I don't know.
Maybe.
But I'm picking flowers, I'm growing them, I'm hanging out, I'm probably in Europe, I'm hitting the beach. That's not a headline at all. Maybe the headline is woman has awesome life, like woman has awesome time. I don't know. But I think like early in my career, in my sales career 5 years ago, I really wanted to be a CRO. I don't know if that's still in my vision, but I don't see why not. I don't think I would ever want to work for a huge company. I think I really enjoy the small company atmosphere. But I think like my next 5 years is sales and figuring out where that lands and what that looks like.
I love this. I have to say, we figured out the career path. CPO, Chief Plant Officer.
Yep. That's easy. That's easy. You have to listen to what they need. You have to give them what they deserve. Speak highly to them, of them. Same thing. Everything is sales. We all know it.
That's it. Yes. Oh, all right. I'm manifesting that 5 years in advance, 25
Great.
years. Maybe the highlight is, or the headline is, Courtney renews her visa in Germany. Who knows? But I'm rooting for you. And I want to give you a chance to, what did I miss? / what are you promoting and where can people connect with you?
As it relates to sales, one thing we missed that I feel like is super cool and unique about Revivn and my sales experience is how much we value in-person sales and in-person community. And obviously you can plug this in wherever it fits. But again, we have been 4 days in the office since September 2020. Like I have never had a remote experience. And the reason for that from a culture perspective was because half of our company had to be in the office. So like we were all in it together. And that has stemmed into, I try to meet all of my new customers in person within the first 60 days of the partnership. Like I'll go to San Francisco. I was in Phoenix. I went to go up to Boston, like wherever the company is, I'll go there. But honestly, most of our partners are in San Francisco. And speaking again of like, it's crazy what people will share with you. It's like, you get so much information on the decision maker and the real problem when you meet them in person. You have a beer, you have a coffee, you're like, so tell me, what is the deal with the senior director? Like what are they actually like? And they're like, oh, they're super chill. They really like biking. Like you should bring up that, blah, blah, blah. Or they'll be like, oh yeah, they have no decision making. I'm fully, if I recommend you, they will take it. And that's so, so core to everything that Revivn does. And it just helps make the relationship and the partnership stronger. So much of like our industry is transactional. Lots of people would call like 1-800-JUNK to get stuff done. Whereas we are working with like the software companies of the future. And so much of that comes from being in person and meeting in real life. So I think that is something I'll take with me throughout my sales career for sure.
Nothing beats it.
Mm-hmm. And then what was the other one that I missed? Why am I so boxed?
Any other promotion you'd like to make or where people can connect with you?
Yeah, definitely LinkedIn is the best place to connect me. And then if you ever see a wildflower shop popping up, perhaps in Norway, perhaps in Germany, who knows, with an English sounding name, that'll be me.
Very, very specific image you have in your mind.
Yeah.
Lovely. The pod community, the Rep Matters listeners will keep an eye out for Courtney.
Thank you, everyone.
Courtney, thank you so much for coming on today. This is a blast.
Such a treat. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Rep Matters, the podcast for sales professionals who become top performers. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to follow Rep Matters wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts, or access all episodes at marketersindemand.com/repmatters. See you next time.